Hi everyone. So this training is going to help you understand the DAS 140 and the DAS 142 forms. Some people refer to them as the DAS. I don't, but you may. This is also going to explain why they're important, why they matter. I guess it's kind of one and the same, and exactly how to complete them and file them. And the topic is critical for compliance. So I've made it really just beginner level on purpose. So whether you're new or you need a refresher, you got it. Let's get into it. So part one, what are the DAS forms? There are two that you need to understand. The DAS 140, like we have on our screen, and the DAS 142, which I will pull up now. Get ourselves a 142 form. Here we go. All right. So the DAS 140 is your notice, it's your notification. And the 142 is your request for apprentices. The DAS 140 is always required when the project includes apprenticeable work. So if you know the classification of the person working or the subcontractor working on the project, on the DIR, the California Department of Industrial Relations website, when you go to find that classification under the wages, it'll show you if it's apprenticeable or not. If it is apprenticeable, then you need to file the DAS 140 and the DAS 142. The DAS 142 is only required if the contractor is actually hiring apprentices. However, the tricky part is, as a subcontractor on a prevailing wage project, you're required to meet that 20% ratio. So of your full hours on the project, 20% of them need to go to apprentices. So whether you want to hire one or not, unless you already have one on your payroll and you know for sure you are going to meet that 20% requirement, you don't need to file the 142. However, if you have someone employed, we will meet with subcontractors that say, oh, I have an apprentice. They're in an apprenticeable program. Fantastic. What happens if that person gets sick? What happens if they go on vacation? What happens if you hit 19.87% of your hours as apprentice hours? You're now in violation. So from our perspective, as the consultant, as the analyst, file the 142. Even if they're union, file the 142. That way, at the end of the project, when all these percentages are calculated, we know we've done our due diligence to cover our client. So, part two, who files it? A general contractor or a GC may either self-perform the work, meaning they have concrete guys on staff or they have carpenters and they're licensed for that in the state of California. This form is only for California, by the way, both of these. Or a subcontractor, a GC, a general contractor, can sub the work out to a subcontractor. They may not perform on the project at all. They may have simply contracted with whoever is saying, hey, here's some money to finish this project. And they may have been great, and then they go and hire everyone to do the work. They don't do any of it. If the GC is self-performing, they must submit the DAS forms. If the GC is our client, we submit it for them. We would ask them to they're going to use on the project, carpenter, plumber, electrician. They might have multiple. And what are their estimated hours? How many hours in total for that classification do they think they're going to use on the project? They may not know. They can guess. Give me an estimate, a number that's close. Don't say 5 when it's 500. Conversely, you don't want to say it's 20,000 hours when it's going to be 200. So ideally that estimate or guesstimate is pretty accurate within a certain range. The reason we need those two things, and their start date, 3 things, is because that allows us to fill out this form. So we already know who our client is. If we are contracted with a general contractor, we already know their address, we know their contractor state license number, we know their phone number, we know the name and address of the project because it has a DIR number, meaning it has a project number on the Department of Industrial Relations, that California website. That DIR number allows us to know what the address is. It tells us who the awarding body is. And that's all. Oh, the contract execution date. I lied. There's 4 things. We need to know what classifications they're going to do on the project, what their start date is, estimated hours, and the date their contract was executed. Typically, they provide us a signed contract, so we're able to see it. And I love this form in the sense that it tells us date of expected or actual start date. You don't need to be a mind reader. Maybe you put 131 and there's 5 rain days. Oh, 5. It's an old form. Maybe there's rain days and you can't start on time. That's okay. You thought you were going to start there. California law states that within 10 days of a signed contract, but no later than the very first day on the job site, this form must be filed to all apprenticeship committees that you, as the subcontractor or general contractor, are going to utilize. So if you're a carpenter, you file it to every carpenter apprenticeship council that does the work that you're going to do on the project. Because you want to let them know, hey, you guys, I'm starting a job, or I just started today. I'm going to need apprentices soon that do the exact work that we do on the job site. Gives them a heads up. Again, why the hours need to be somewhat accurate. If you put 20 hours down here, you need 20% of that. So 20 minus 20%, you need 4 hours. They're going to be like, oh, that's nice. Have a good day. They'll take your form, whatever. They're not going to send you apprentice for 4 hours. It's half a day. But if you put down 80,000 hours and you only need 100 apprentice hours, well, that's not 20%, but if you put down 8,000 hours, that gets them excited because 20% of that is a great amount. They're going to send people to you. They know they're going to be able to have someone really get their training in one project. That's the goal, is to get these apprentices in consistent training so they can really have some hands-on work. If the GC is not self-performing, each subcontractor doing apprenticeable work must submit their own forms. So that's kind of tricky because if the GC subs everything out, they're not going to fill this out. But what if they sometimes perform or sometimes don't? To bear on the side of caution, if the GC is our client, the general contractor, and we know that on many, many jobs they do carpentry, they just have told us they're not going to perform this time, I would file it. Because knowing our world of construction, there's likely going to be some time that our client, the general contractor, who, is not going to perform on this job, is going to pick up a tool and have to go do some finish work because that's what they're qualified to do. So for safety's sake, I say file that. Ideally, though, you always want to confirm who's going to be doing the work. Even if the general contractor is our client, then we need to know who their subcontractors are because we want to monitor and make sure that they're completing the forms correctly too. So before just guessing or thinking we know the answer, always get it in writing and ask, hey, general contractor we've worked with on 44 jobs, are you going to be performing on this one? And until they tell you, we never self-perform, great, I'm not going to ask you again. But if sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, you want to confirm. Part 3. How many apprentices do you request? So we talked a smidge about the 20% mandated apprentice ratio. The state of California is a bit of a conundrum in the sense that they will tell you very outright on all of their information and FAQs and all of that you need to hit that 20%. If you're a contractor, subcontractor, if you're performing work on the job site of a public works project, you need 20% of those total hours to be apprentice hours, where your apprentice is working at a apprenticeship program, not just they don't know what they're doing. They need to be enrolled in a school to learn this skill. The DIR, Department of Industrial Relations, also says you don't have to sign any extra work. If you file this form and you say, hey, we're going to need an apprentice, and that apprenticeship council comes back and says, I'm not going to give you an apprentice until you fill out our form and pay. You don't have to do that. There's nothing in the regulations that say that you have to sign up with an agency. I kind of combat that or share the information with our subcontractor or our contractor, whoever our client is, and say, here's the deal. You know who you're working for. An awarding body or a general contractor is going to be who they're working for. Is that agency completely fine with you never having apprentices? I don't know. I don't work with them. If that agency is fine with them never having apprentices, then you file this DAS 142 as the law states. You did your due diligence. Maybe you do it a couple of times in the course of the project to really show that good faith effort that we were trying to get someone. But if the client says, oh, they're really going to be on top of it. They said that if we don't get the 20% apprentices, we're not going to get paid. Then sign it for the program. There's probably going to be fees involved and things like that, but in order to guarantee you meet your percentage, you might just need to sign up for the program. Now, on to how many apprentices do you ask for? This is where people get confused because we are all numbers here, and there are too many numbers floating around in our head, right? So on this form, the 140, we're telling these apprentice councils, hey, we got a contract. We are going to have a total journeyman hours only of, let's say, 1,000. Okay, great. Then we want 20% of those apprentice hours, or 200, to be allocated as apprentice hours. So we're in our head thinking 200, 200, 200. Because California says that at least 20% of the total work hours in apprenticeable trades need to be completed by apprentices enrolled in a state acknowledged or accepted fund or class or something like that. But then you get to the 142, and in your head you're thinking 200, 200, 200. And it says number of apprentices needed, and you tell yourself, oh my gosh, we need 200 apprentices. No, you don't. That was hours. There's nothing on here that says hours. Why they try to confuse you like that, I have no idea. You're going to need one person. In all the 140s and 142s that I've sent out, when it comes to requesting an apprentice, it is rare that I'm asking for more than one. One apprentice. How many apprentices do you need? One. When you look at your 142, your 140, it's going to show you the name of the company that you're filling out for, right? Even if you're auditing this, it's the name of the company. That same name, ABC Supply Company, is going to go here under Contractor Requesting Dispatch. Your client, the person you're working with, is who you're going to put. The tricky part is we think to ourselves, but I'm asking for it. I work for labor compliance pros. Are you going to build the project? No. So I was described as whose hat are you wearing? Are you wearing the hat where you're monitoring the project and you're looking at a submission like this and saying, okay, did they fill it out completely? Did they fill out all the lines, the boxes, everyone signed? Or are you putting on the hat of, I now work at ABC Supply Company and I need to fill out their paperwork. What do I do? Well, now you know where you work. You work at ABC Supply Company. Here's your address, 123 Apple Street. You're going to do this project. That's the hat you have on. So when you request dispatch, put on the hat. You now are working there. What is the address of that company? What is the license of that subcontractor? Those are the details you need to put in. How many apprentices do you need? One. No one is going to be mad at you if they're like, Susie Smith, we needed 2 apprentices. Okay. But if you put down 200, because in your head you're thinking, oh, I need 20% of the hours, that union is going to call so fast because they're going to think, oh my goodness, every single one of our apprentices is going to have a job for life if they need 200. And if they send out even a portion of that, because maybe you didn't catch it, maybe the union was like, I'm not going to call, I'm just going to send people out. Our client, ABC Supply Company, is going to have to pay a 4-hour shift for every single apprentice they sent out that wasn't needed. And if that apprentice did not have a proper journeyman to watch over them, they're going to have to pay them the journeyman rate for at least 4 hours. So it really pays to pay attention. Make notes for yourself for your project. Okay, so let's recap. California requires at least 20% of the total hours worked on site in apprenticeable trades to be used for apprentices. 20% are apprentice hours. So if the subcontractor says, hey, we're going to have 1,000 journeyman hours, great, then you need to request at least 200 apprentice hours so you know what that percentage is. Even if a subcontractor does not plan to use apprentices, they still must file this form. And I say that because we will have subcontractors call us from ABC Supply Company and say, we're going to be working on the Happy Days Elementary School. We were told it is public works. It's going to be a really short project. We're only going to be there for 1,000 hours. Like, awesome. So I'll file these forms to request an apprentice for you. Okay, so we are going to always request apprentices, even if they tell you they don't need them. We'll request them. In many classifications, such as, it says in here, millwright is where you put that up, occupation of apprentice. They won't have apprentices sometimes, so they won't send anybody out, but you still request them so that you meet that requirement by law. Part 4, the good part. You fill it out. This form is about who you're affiliated with and where you send it. So we're going to break down that checkbox section in the bottom because this part is somewhat self-explanatory, right? If we have the right hat on, we are our client. We are ABC Supply Company. We work for them. We do their paperwork. So we know their name, their license number, their address, their phone number. From that DIR form or DIR number, we now know where they're working. We've asked them for a copy of their contract. We can see when it was executed. We know their start date. We know their estimated hours, which then we've separated out that 20% for hours only. And then the approximate dates to be employed. We will happily put whatever that range is. If they say they're going to be there for a couple weeks, okay, it's 5/1 to 6/1. Because construction is so fickle and the schedules change like crazy cakes, we will usually put that they're going to be on site for 1 year. I'm going to cover that range. If we know for sure that there may be finishers in the sense that they're construction and they go up and just do the last little bit, or they're final clean, and so it's going to take them a couple weeks and they're done. Then that range can be more precise. What we're finding is that sometimes we'll put down that exact range, and then there'll be an audit where there was perhaps a change order and the subcontractor agreed with whoever they were contracted with to do additional work. So their time on site extended. And now it looks like, even though this says approximate, because that window of time that they worked is so far different than what they put down, it can look deceitful to the auditing agency. So we just try to do a year, unless we know for sure they are just going to be there for that certain window of time. So if we scroll down the part where you have to choose a box, let me tell you what they're all for. So box 1 is if they're already affiliated with an apprenticeship program. So maybe ABC Apprentice Program said, you can train. We're going to let your ladies and gentlemen on the job site train them. Awesome. They're affiliated with one. Perhaps they're already union. And if they're already associated with the union, that's who you're going to put there, because you have to enter the name of the committee. So you're not entering your subcontractor. You're not entering whose hat you're wearing. You're entering who they have already an agreement with, if they have an agreement. So you will already know if they're union or not. And that's when you would fill out that box. Don't fill it out if they're not. If you don't know, ask. Because if you click the wrong box, it can make the whole form null and void. Which, if you sign it early enough, okay, you just do a new one. But if you complete it the day they're on site and come to find out a week later, a month later, a year later, you were wrong, they could assess fines in that duration because it'll look like it was never filed correctly. So if you don't know, ask the client, hey, are you union? Are you affiliated with the union? Box 2. They're not affiliated with a union, but they're willing to join. I'm going to go back. Box 1. When you complete the name in there, you send the form only to that program. So if they're affiliated with, maybe they're union and they're with the carpenters, you send it just to the carpenters, local whatever number, and that's who you send it to. I say, please hold caution. Because if they don't meet the 20% of apprentice hours by the end of the project, you will then have had to send this form to every apprenticeship council that could have sent them an apprentice. Slow down. I just gave you a lot of information. So they're union, and they're union with the carpenters. Local 15. Just made that up. So you are like, great. Carpenters, local 15. You're going to check that box. You are not going to check that one. And you send it over to carpenters, local 15. But you've also said they're going to get 200 hours for millwrighting. Well, what if there is no apprentices that they can send? Now at the end of the project, someone's finally getting all their ducks in a row because everyone's behind. And they look and they go, oh, geez, ABC Supply Company did not make their apprentice ratio. And they look at your one lonely little DAS 140 and the proof that you submitted it to the carpenters. And they're like, why didn't you send it to the other unions? Why didn't you send it to the other apprentice councils? In my head, I would be like, because they're union. They already, have this guy on their payroll and he's an apprentice. But now, if I'm the auditor, I'm saying, but you didn't meet your percentage. And if you would have sent it to the other apprenticeship councils, they would have had a chance to send you someone. Maybe not. but we don't know because you didn't send it. So even when they're union, just to cover my tush, I send it to every apprenticeable council that it applies to. Those places will see that box and they're like, whatever, they're union. But I want to know, I told you. And when I send the 142, I'm going to send it to all of them, not just the local 15. I want all of them to know, hey, if you guys have an apprentice, send them to the job site. In that case, I would rather our client pay 4 hours for an apprentice that showed up that they didn't need and an apprentice from their own company that they weren't sure was going to be there than to have nobody show up and now they're not in compliance. So it does take communication. You do need to confirm what day you're going to start. What union are you with? There's a lot of going back and forth, and you have to keep your notes in order. If you don't, you won't remember that they told you they were union 3 times. Or you won't remember that they told you we never perform on site. We always sub it out. Or you won't remember that they told you, I have 5 subcontractors. Did you check to make sure they did this paperwork? So notes are crucial. If you have a folder and it just has all of your notes in there, that's very helpful for each subcontractor. So box 1, affiliated with the union. They are able to train apprentices. You only send it to that union in theory. In reality, it may be wise to send it to all the unions that have to do with this classification of mill rate. For example, also with number 1, they will typically get something called a form called a DAS 7. And it simply says that ABC Supply Company is able to train apprentices. Typically, there is no need then for you to file a DAS 142. That's just another little piece to write down in your notes. We'll get to that later. Okay, so box 1, they are affiliated with the union. You write down that union, you send it to the union. And you still make it 20%. Your ratio is still going to be 20%. Okay, box 2, they are not affiliated with an apprentice committee or union, but they're willing to join. What? Okay, a couple things. So there are projects out there called PLAs, Project Labor Agreements, PSA, Project Stabilization Agreement, CBA, Collective Bargaining Agreement, all these little acronyms. What it means is there are projects where the union has put their stank and said, everyone who works on this job has to join a union somewhere in place time. They have to only hire union workers, even if that means that their workers have to join the union. They call the union and say, hey, we want our own worker to show up at our job. Super silly. It's how it goes. In that case, a subcontractor, if now ABC Supply Company, they're no part of the union, they're just a regular guy, but they're working on now a PLA, a project labor agreement, a project that has an agreement with the labor, they might have to join Carpenters Local 15 just for this project. And this is exactly what it says. Will comply with the standards of, enter the name of the committee, for the duration of this job only. So you could be sending out 140s for them all the time, but for this one job, because it's a PLA, project labor agreement, they need to be connected with a union. So whatever union the PLA says to use for carpenters, that's the one they use. They stay the same, your ratios stay the same. But now you know that for this one project, it's going to be a union project. And that's helpful if in your notes too, you're keeping proof of all this. You're able to say, okay, that's right. I'm only doing the union work for them for this project. I don't have to ask them, hey, are you on the union for the next job? No, you already know that it was like a one-off. It was for one project. In this case, no matter what, you send the form to all approved apprenticeship committees because they're just complying with the standards this one time. So you're still going to send it out to everyone, even though it's a union. Super tricky like a PLA. But when you check box 2, you send it out to every apprenticeship council that has to do with that classification. And the classification is also called a craft. It's called an occupation. It's called a classification. And you send it to the county the project is located in. So if our lovely company is in Orange County, California, that's a different county than Los Angeles. So you look at the county that the project's in. The county the project's in is where you're going to send your 140 and your 142s. So there will be an apprenticeship committee connected, come on, Hyler, connected to Los Angeles and whatever county Los Angeles is in. Then you will find the carpenters, any apprenticeship committee, that's carpenters that does millwright work in this case, with Los Angeles County. And we'll go on the DIR and we're going to play through it and try to find it. There's also a program that we use called MITRE. And it's a little bit easier because once you know the county and the trade, we'll call it a trade also, trade, craft, occupation, classification. Once you find that trade and you plug in the county, it'll give you a list of who to send it to. So that's a little bit easier of like narrowing down. Now, box 3, what is this fun box for? It is sometimes offensive when I tell people, if you slow down and read, it will tell you what you're looking for. Yes, I feel like California law is trying to trip us up sometimes, but many times with the compliance forms, if we slow down and read, we're able to like come to this grand epiphany, me included. So box 3, not affiliated to any union. You don't need to and you don't want to join, but you still have to pay part of the training to an agency. And what that means is on the wage determination, it'll show the fringe benefits separated from the base hourly pay. Excuse me. So in those fringes, how they will be broken up, a portion will go to training, an amount will go to training. If they're in the union will provide you what that breakdown is, and you'll send all of your fringes to the union. If the person from ABC Supply is not part of the union, they're not willing to join, and it's not a PLA, so they don't have to, then this is the box you're going to check. And what it says when we slow down and read is we will employ and train apprentices in accordance with the California Apprenticeship Council regulations, including, and here's the standard, 230.1C, which requires the apprentices employed on public projects can only be assigned to perform work of a craft or trade to which the apprentice is registered, and that the apprentices must at all times work under the direct supervision of journeymen. Whoa, that just gave you a mouthful of the law. So in this case, because they are working in accordance with the California Apprenticeship Council, there's an agency where you send the training to called the California Apprenticeship Council. So I can look up my training. Okay, so when I was on the website, I just put in CAC training. The website is the DIR, that's the Department of Industrial Relations. It's only for the state of California, but it will tell you exactly where to pay. So when I was able to search CAC training, it will come up with multiple things, and we'll choose just this first one. This is where those training fund contributions go. And right now you might just be hearing these words, but it all boils down to what box you're checking. The first one was for union. The second one was for a PLA, or they didn't mind joining for one project. And the third one was them saying the standards of the California Apprenticeship Council, which is the CAC. That's what they're going to comply to, which means every month, and again, this will tell you, you must enter all requested information in order to Ensure successful submission. Training fund contributions are due on the 15th of each month. So by the 15th at the latest of each month, no, that wouldn't be good because we're not paying for it. Our client is. Probably by the 5th or maybe sooner, you're going to calculate how much time they spent on the project, what county they were in, what occupation they had. So we've got millwrights, what their total hours for the month were, maybe 100, what the rate was. Oh, it was, $1. And once the top portion is complete with our client's information, this middle section is complete with your information, then you will put in the little code, which changes every 5 seconds, and calculate the total, and it'll tell you that this is $100 that they owe. If they have different classifications in the same county, maybe on that same project, they worked a ton of different classifications. Everything that has to do with the job site, the project, and this time frame and our client can be all on one sheet. So when they say the California Apprenticeship Council, I'm going to go back to that form. California Apprenticeship Council, that's the CAC. That in your head should click, oh, their training goes to the CAC. I need to set my calendar so that by the 5th of the month or sooner, I'm calculating the hours and sending ABC Supply Company an invoice to say, this is what you owe the CAC for the hours that you had workers working on this project. Because you said you're not going to pay them to the union, not always, not for once. So you're going to pay it to the CAC, just the training. So that's what all those boxes stand for. There is a link to use. I'm going to get it here. And so this is find an apprenticeship program like we were just talking about. So disclaimer, the following list of registered program sponsors does not necessarily signify they're taking applications for apprenticeship or employment. Program sponsors determine individually when they will take applications. Please contact program sponsors to check on open application periods. So pretty much what you're going to do is find the county the project's in. The project, not where your person is, not the hat of their company, not our county, California. Where's the project? What now occupation did you put they're going to do on the 140 on here? Occupation of apprentice, millwright. Select an occupation, millwright. They just need to match. And you hit search. In this case, it only comes up with one. It needs to be sent to the Southwest Carpenter and Affiliated Trades, JATC, for millwright. Interesting, it talks about the starting wage and all this kind of stuff. But what you're going to do, this is the location of where you're going to send it. Since it has an email address, you can email it to them too. And I say too, you're not going to send it, you're going to email it. If there was no email address there, there's typically a phone number, and you can call the person and say, where do I send a 140 and a 142? 142 too. Sometimes I'll have a fax number, but in many cases, that's an email. Alrighty. Now on to another important part. Part 5. Common mistakes that make a DAS 140 invalid, thus opening up for fines. If you leave anything blank, it's like you didn't even do the work. If you put, they're still working on this. No, that's not, to be determined is not a number. I don't know, again, if that's 1 million or if it's 2. I need to know hours. You have to have a number in there. It can't be blank either. If you copy and paste the same information, including where you're sending it to, but yet you realize, oh, I need to email it there, but you didn't put Southwest Carpenters, you did. That makes it invalid because you weren't putting it corrective. Who is this form being sent to? Little tiny things. If you do not specify a real start date or a real date range. So maybe they get the contract and they're like, oh, we don't know when we're going to start. You're like, I'm not going to deal with this. I will put that they're going to start next year. You don't know that though. That's not an actual real start date and range. So maybe you can't pin them down to the date, but if you can get a range, again, you can ask, when do you think you might start? Oh, we don't know. It's going to be sometime this summer. I'm going to put down June 1st. If you think it's going to be later than that, oh, well, not that early. Maybe August. Okay, put down August. If you start in July, great. It's just a small little window. We're still going to file that 142 for them as well. So if you're sending to 3 different committees, you must make 3 individual forms. I have in the past, before I knew better, I would be like, oh, I'm going to send it here and here. Then don't put that one on this form. Send it here and send a new form that you send here. So that's something to remember. You have to have one form per committee. Part 6, deadlines and penalties. Okay, so the 140, this one that we're looking at, must be submitted within 10 days of contract award, no later than the first day on the project. So your timeline is very small. If our client, good old ABC Supply Company, doesn't tell us they're on the project till they're done, get it in writing. That is not our fault. We will still submit it. We can put down for paperwork purposes, or we can just call the union and let them know, hey, I sent over a form. My sub was late telling me that they needed to get it in. Or we just file it and it's late and oh well. But get it in writing why it's late. Because these projects pre-COVID were audited within 18 months to 2 years. And now they're around 2 to 3 years after the project's done. So you're not going to remember why you did what you did. You're not going to remember, oh, why did I file it late? Because they emailed you after they were done with the job. It happens a lot. So don't get frustrated by that. Just keep your paperwork and know that I usually will send them a disclaimer of, thanks for letting me know you're complete with the project, because there are timely forms that need to be submitted no later than the date you're on site. I can't submit some of those timely. May or may not open you up to fines, but I wanted you to know. Now, the 142 has specific requirements as well. It will tell you at the top, for projects with less than 40 hours of journey workers, you must request and employ apprentices in no less than 8-hour increments. So, and list one occupation or one craft per form. So I've had subcontractors say, oh, I'm not going to be on the job, but like an hour, so I don't need an apprentice. Oh, you do. You just can't request one for less than 8 hours. You can't say I need them there for 17 minutes because that's 20% of the time I'm on site. But you still need to request it. Now, are they going to send you one? Probably not, but they might. So there's no way out of that one. Again, we continue to read. You may use this form to make a written request for the dispatch of an apprentice. Requests for dispatch must be in writing and submitted at least 72 hours in advance. So your client cannot call you on Monday and say, hey, we're going to be on site Tuesday. It's our last day. We're done. Why didn't you tell me 2 weeks ago you knew you were going to be on the schedule for Tuesday? They get their schedules. They get them like 3 weeks in advance. That's just how construction works. So why they don't tell you until the last minute, do not know, but you are not the only one. It happens to all of us. Holidays, so those days don't count. If first class mail, fax, or email, proof of submission may be required. It's required. Keep the fax transmission slip. Keep your certified mail slip. Keep your fax information, your email. The sent mail is proof of submission. keep all of that. 72 hours, these unions and every auditor is like so on it by the minute. Be mindful of your time. Not 71 and a half hours, doesn't count. Not 78 hours, but including a Saturday, doesn't count. So no holidays, no weekends, and they have obscure holidays. So different holidays count. So you just got to be very particular. I try to make sure we do 4 to 5 days in advance, excluding weekends and holidays. That way, if there's some random President's Day that I wasn't thinking about, we're still good. That's where the communication comes in too, to make sure that you're letting them know, hey, if you're due to be on there July 1st, I'm going to call you May 15th and see if you have your schedule. Just because that keeps you so you're not doing this mad panic at the last minute either. Penalties. Why do we even care? If they don't file it, oh well. Well, no, because we're the filers. So if they don't file it, that means we didn't file it. So if we can be on time, if we can do it timely, we need to. Because the fine is up to $300 per day for each day of non-compliance. And sometimes that's like $300 per classification. Occasionally it's per worker that they're out of compliance. So that's why I also say get it in writing, because I don't want them coming back in 2 years saying we owe them $9,000 because we didn't file something timely and they got fined. We need to know the communications. The only reason we didn't do it on time is because they didn't tell us. So it also could lead to disqualification from public projects for that subcontractor. And it can lead to audits, because once one thing's wrong, it typically means that more things are wrong. So don't be the one. Don't wait. Submit it right and on time. If that means you have to look it over each line and have someone check your work, so be it. Don't assume there's too much confusion that goes on. Okay, so where to find help? Notes say you don't have to memorize this, which is true. You do not need to memorize all of it. I will make sure that I have sent over a list of things to. Here's one. It is the Division of Apprentice Standards, Public Works Information. It's changes on the law code you can see, for residential wages, how to determine a pay rate of an apprentice, where to put your training funds. Very, very, very helpful. Along with the forms that we were looking at. That 140, there's an Excel version. There's a PDF. 142, it's a PDF. CAC training fund contributions, frequently asked questions. So there's a ton of information here. And then that link where we did the apprentice program search, it's another link. That's very important, so I'll make sure to include that. The labor law code, where all this comes from, and you can use the DIR search bar, it's up there with Google, is to me very impressive, very helpful. Same. Put in labor code 1777.5, and this will bring up everything about properly registered apprentices. So if you're going to call your client, or you want to leave them a message or let them know, when you're sending an email that something didn't get sent correctly, I always try to find the labor code that's associated with it, so that I'm not quoting my words, but I'm able to say, hey, this is the labor code. So a lot of prevailing wage labor code starts at 1776. This makes me think of like Discovery of America, or whoever that was on a boat. Okay, part 8. A quick recap. So some of the things we're going to ask for, and I'll make a checklist, is the contractor self-performing or using subcontractors. Remember, if they're self-performing, you complete these forms for them if they're our client. If they are not performing anything, they're subbing it all out to other people, you're going to then check on those subs and make sure each of them submitted the correct forms. Are the journeyman hours known? Are they accurate? Have you asked for them? Do you calculate the correct number of apprentice hours? So remember that 200, it's a big number, but it's just 20%. It's always going to be 20%. It's not always going to be 200, but it will always be 20% of the journeyman hours. Did you send the form to the right committees with the right name filled in? Always check your work. It's so easy to copy and paste and start getting confused or interrupted, and all of a sudden you're doing something wrong. Did you include specific dates? No TBD, no to be determined, no blank forms. And did you submit it within 10 days of the executed contract or no later than the first day? And then with the 142, did you provide at least 72 hours notice to the apprentice council that you're sending it to, excluding weekends and holidays? Did you make sure you put in one apprentice, one apprentice, one apprentice? So just slow down and read. If you're getting stressed out, oh my gosh, I can't remember what to do. Number of apprentices, 1. Number of hours, not 1. There would never be 1 hour that they need. Because remember, it always said you had to have at least 8-hour increments. So 20% is this number of this number. Always 1 apprentice. Well, that's it. So if you follow this process, you'll be in good shape. And it's okay if you don't remember it all. You can use the resources, the checklist, and you can watch this video. So bookmark the links that are sent over, save the script, and rewatch it if needed. It should have little words at the bottom. And then for this portion, we didn't go too much over this at all. Again, slow down to read. So today's date, the apprenticeship committee is the same one you put here because it says apprenticeship program. And then this is all for the apprenticeship committee. This is all for our client. Project information, this is all for the project. Again, you don't want anything blank. So put in a number, even if it may be somewhat of an estimate. 1 apprentice. This craft or trade is same as occupation because they like to confuse us with different words. This is the date that you're requesting that an apprentice is sent to the job site for our client. And the time to report, remember, you're going to want it to be, if you're filling it out for Pacific time, you're putting 11 a.m. Eastern time because then they know it's 8 a.m. Or you're communicating and saying, hey, you guys are going to be on the site at 5. You're going to be there at 7. When's a good time for someone to come? A lot of times the first day an apprentice reports on the job, it's not the first day that our client's working. It may be a week later, but you want to get that request sent in so that if they do send someone, the percentages are correct. Name of person to report to is going to be a foreman on the job site for our client. And you can ask them, hey, who's an apprentice going to ask for? Maybe it's Dave and here's his cell phone number. The address to report to is likely going to be the project address. However, we have had clients that want this address to be the same as the company address because they want to do background checks and they want to do a drug test and they want to have them fill out the paperwork. So again, don't assume, but just double check. Do you want someone reporting to your office site first or do you want them to report to the job site? If they report to the job site, that project manager, the PM, or the superintendent, the super, needs to know to have application packets there or whatever their HR recommends so that when the apprentice comes, they can fill out new hire paperwork and get started working. That's not usually something we touch on, but if someone's new to prevailing wage, we do like them to know because they may have not thought about it. Alrighty, that's it. There are so many resources, so I don't want to inundate you, but whenever you're stuck, you can Google how to fill out a 140, how to fill out a 142, and there's a ton of information out there because everyone's learning style is different. But all in all, slow down and read, always an apprentice, and ask for help. Thank you.